Do you ever feel anxious? Or you start to get a little nervous about conversations you're about to have? Or maybe you just start going over it in your mind and you're like, oh my goodness, maybe nothing has even happened. And you're sitting on the couch and all of a sudden a thought comes through and you start to get anxious. You start to feel that unease. Your peace is disrupted. How do we deal with those things? And today I'm talking about the kind of everyday anxiousness that kind of pops up in all kinds of ways. Now, there is anxiety that really it's really good to go see a professional about, and I completely encourage that. But today, we're just talking about kind of the everyday anxieties and how do we deal with it? How can we get a little bit of clarity, refocus ourselves when it begins to happen? And so I've got a couple passages here. The first one being Psalm 94, verses 18 through 19. Whenever I feel my foot slipping, your faithful love steadies me. When my anxieties multiply, your comforting calms me down. Whenever I feel my foot slipping, your faithful love steadies me. When my anxieties multiply, your comforting calms me down. All right, so thinking through those two verses of going, all right, how does God comfort me when I feel like I'm just kind of starting to slip, like I'm starting to get a little nervous, that unease is creeping in, when my anxieties start to multiply? And here's something that can be really good. Here the psalmist is like, okay, I've got to refocus myself on God's love. I've got to refocus myself on how God's love is part of my life. And one of the ways that we can do that when our anxieties begin to rise is to begin to list off all the people who have loved us, who love us today, who have loved us in the past. That moment of just kind of listing off and thinking about how you experienced love from them. It redirects. And a reminder that all love is from God. And so to think about how we've experienced love from others and to just mentally go through that list. Maybe we even write that list down so that we can have we can have it in our hands, like a way to focus ourselves on how God's love has come into our lives through others. And then to be able to be encouraged by how do we converse? What's another thing that we can do? And Philippians 4 verses 6 through 7 help us with that. Don't be anxious about anything. Rather, bring up all of your requests to God in your prayers and petitions, along with giving thanks. So first, here the writer Paul in Philippians is saying, hey, you know what? We're going to have anxieties. Take them to God. Have that conversation. Be verbal about it. Say it. Write it down, have that conversation, because sometimes when we get on that hamster wheel going over and over in our minds, it's helpful for us to just speak them, to be real about it, to be like, hey, God, here are the things that I am struggling with today. Boom, 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 right? And so to think through and have that conversation. But then Philippians says something really interesting at the end of verse 7. It says, along with giving thanks. So first, being in conversation with God, being real about those things that we're struggling with, those anxious things, those things that produce a bit of anxiety in ourselves. And then here we get, what are we grateful for? So another redirecting. So as we pour out the things that we're struggling with, the things that make us anxious, we then are able to turn to, all right, what am I grateful for this day? What is good in my life? So a refocusing, a redirecting ourselves. First, from the psalmist, we get this whole thing about love and focusing on how God's love is with us, enveloping us, how we experience it through others and making that list. And then here, let's converse with God. And now, what are we grateful for in life? So a redirecting. So I hope this day that you can be blessed, that as you feel those anxieties, that unease begin to rise, those things that are disrupting your peace, that you can find a way to redirect, to refocus on how God's love is constantly with you, constantly encouraging you, May you have those conversations and find those things you are grateful for this day. May you be blessed. Have a good one.